John Kelly will be leaving at the end of the year. We'll be announcing who will be taking John's place. I'll be announcing that over the next day or two. I appreciate his service very much.
The president once again responded to the special counsel's court filings. He denied that he did anything wrong.
On the Mueller situation, we're very happy with what we are reading. There's absolutely no collusion, which is very important.
For the third year in a row, the Black Knights of Army have won the Army-Navy matchup.
Pete is just beaming.
Just waiting to talk about this.
The Army. There was pride in your face. I saw it.
Well, there's only one thing that went well for Navy yesterday, and it was the coin flip. That's it. They won the coin flip, and after that, it was all downhill.
Morgan Ortega's talked a lot of trash yesterday.
She really did.
We should get a phoner.
Listen, we should. We'll have her on the program. 3 years in a row, though. I mean, we lost 14 years in a row. Now we got a hat trick for Army. And, 22nd ranked team in the country.
And you attribute it to President Trump being there.
Of course. He was there when he was president-elect.
Yeah.
He watched it from the White House.
Pete attributes a lot of things, a lot of successes to
Well, you
President
might
Trump.
say I was also there.
He's like their
3 years
mascot,
ago.
I guess, according to Pete.
Oh.
Well, he might be. America, I mean, isn't our president America's mascot anyway?
That is true. The Navy has Bill the Goat, right? So,
What is, we got the Black Knights.
And also President Trump, apparently.
Welcome back, Nicole.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
great to be here again.
And the president, as you noted, was at the Army-Navy game when he's dealing with all kinds of personnel shifts at the White House, but also new
stuff.
It's
Yeah.
a little
Things
bit
going on.
Maybe a new chief of staff, some other things, new attorney general. We'll get to that in a minute. But James Comey back in the news, front and center, something the president, no doubt, will be happy to hear about because the transcript of Comey's closed-door testimony came out yesterday. And what I find most fascinating is the man who remembered enough bad stuff about President Trump to write a best-selling book and enrich himself suddenly can't remember all kinds of things when it comes to Hillary Clinton's emails, the dossier, and all kinds of things on the other side of the ledger he just can't remember.
I don't know what you're talking about, Ed.
Right, I think he said it was 156 times that he was quoted, I don't know, 72 times, I don't remember, 8 times, I don't recall. I guess I don't know the difference between I don't recall and I don't remember.
Just trying to mix it up.
But, I guess you got to do that when it's only 200 and something pages and you have 200 and something lines of him saying,
Well, they made this deal, right? It won't be in public. It'll be behind closed doors, so we'll release the transcript. I think it doesn't matter you're in public or in private. If you're in a place where you feel like you might perjure yourself or you might contradict testimony, the only thing you can say is, I don't know, or I don't remember.
I think it was a smart move, but you don't want to say, I don't know, because they can disprove that at some point. The I don't remember and I don't recall, no one can disprove that you don't remember something.
But to Ed's point, great point, but to Ed's point, he wrote a book, he wrote memos.
He remembered all kinds
of things.
Part of
massive FISA applications suddenly. I don't remember.
And
I don't recall.
Look at this exchange with John Ratcliffe, who's a Republican on the Judiciary Committee. James Comey admits the unverified nature of the dossier. Ratcliffe asked, do you recall that on numerous occasions subsequent to October of 2016, you, in your capacity as FBI director, referred to the Steele dossier as salacious and unverified?
May I reply?
Please.
As Comey? Yes, I don't know what I was referring to all of it. Maybe I was, but I had in mind some particular portions of it that were salacious and unverified. So when I called it salacious and unverified, I just meant a few portions.
But he said
the rest
maybe
of it was
all
thoroughly
of it.
vetted.
But maybe it was all of it. But I was really referring to some of it. So is he alluding to it actually could have gone to all of it?
Yes, and also Trey Gowdy pressed him on the point that, look, you think everything that President Trump did, whether it's firing you or other things, that it amounts to obstruction of justice, and you write your little memos about it. Then Barack Obama did that interview back in the 2016 campaign with Fox's Chris Wallace and said, let Hillary Clinton go. She didn't have criminal intent. What do you think of that? And Comey said, I didn't see that through the lens of obstruction of justice. Gowdy said, well, did you make a memo? What do you mean, a memo about this Fox News interview? No. Well, okay.
So no, did you tell your staff not to be influenced by it?
Right. He
said, no, I didn't.
So President Trump does something he finds icky. There's a memo. There's a federal case. Barack Obama does something he finds questionable. he frankly doesn't do anything.
So Comey said this as well. What I understand by verified is that we try to communicate the source info so that it becomes an FBI investigation and our conclusions rather than a reliable source's conclusions. That had not been done by May of 2017. So by May of 2017, James Comey admits nothing verified about the salacious dossier he's talking about. Yet, it is what our government used to justify surveillance of a presidential candidate,
And
or at least
that is the
4
big
members
question.
of the
How
campaign.
did that happen? How did this salacious, unverified document become the basis of how they got this warrant? And also, don't forget the 3 extensions of the warrant, if it was still uncorroborated and unverified at the time. I mean, how is, I don't know, that is what I think, for me, is the biggest concern.
And Comey repeated what he told.
Extend.
Exactly.
Yes.
He also repeated in this testimony what he told our own Brett Baer on his book tour, that he really didn't hear about Christopher Steele, the ex-British spy who put the dossier, the unverified dossier together. He didn't really hear about him. You were the FBI director. How did you, either you're not telling the truth or it's incredible that you're in charge, quote unquote, and you didn't even know this guy was writing the dossier.
Absolutely. And you went to Trump Tower to brief the president-elect about it without knowing what the source
More
was.
important than all of that is you went to the FISA judge. He and other officials at the FBI and the DOJ signed their names to get the FISA warrant, to go to the FISA judge, use the dossier. And Jim Jordan says, this is all quite ridiculous. Watch.
245 times he says, don't remember, don't recall, and don't know. What was most, I guess, the biggest takeaway for me was the don't know part. Specifically, he didn't know much about Christopher Steele, the guy who they used his work product, the dossier, to go get the warrant to spy on the Trump campaign. By that, here's the key player, the guy who put together the dossier that was the basis for getting the warrant, and you didn't know anything about him. I find that hard to believe, but that was those were his answers yesterday.
He also didn't know much about Bruce Orr.
Well, the
DOJ
interesting
lawyer.
thing was he said the dossier came from a reliable source, but then he was saying that he doesn't know much about Steele. So which is it? Is Steele a reliable source, or does he not know much about him? And that's where I got a little confused in this. And unfortunately, I think that's where Americans
we're
are
all
confused.
confused.
We all are. Again, we get all these 200-page memos and documents, but we still don't really understand
Well, and
something.
so maybe some people didn't tell the truth under oath. Wait a second. I think a standard is being set with the Bob Mueller investigation. You lie, you're prosecuted, right?
We should hold the same standard.
There's going to be some follow-up with Comey. He'll be coming back behind closed doors with the Republicans. I bet this is obviously not the last.
Now,
word.
Ed, is there other stuff going on?
There's
lot of
this
other
White
things.
House shakeout
The
right now.
on the way to the Army-Navy game, apparently had set a deal with John Kelly that Kelly would be able to announce himself on Monday that he's leaving. Instead, the president, maybe trying to change some of the headlines that are out there, goes out and tells reporters on his way to the Army-Navy game, Kelly's out.
John Kelly will be leaving, but I don't know if I can say retiring, but he's a great guy. John Kelly will be leaving at the end of the year. We'll be announcing who will be taking John's place. It might be on an interim basis. I'll be announcing that over the next day or two. I appreciate his service very much.
So John Kelly's a great American. He's done amazing things for this country in uniform and out of uniform. But everyone sort of knew this was coming. This was inevitable. And Nick Ayers seems to be the front runner, a political type in the Pence world, to be the future chief of staff. We don't know.
That's Vice President Pence, current chief of staff.
Correct. So he's been rumored to be the guy as a front runner. But if you read the headlines yesterday, you would think this is an absolute shocker and an aberration. The New Yorker said John Kelly, the White House chief of staff, is finally leaving Crazy Town. The Atlantic, John Kelly couldn't fix the Trump presidency slate. John Kelly was supposed to bring credibility to the White House. He failed. But Nicole, this, is this out of the normal?
The turnover in the current administration is unprecedented. However, it is normal. Multiple recent presidents have had multiple chief of staffs. I mean, for instance, Barack Obama had, I believe, 3 to 4 in his first term with 5 overall. George Bush had 2. Bill Clinton had 4. But everyone just likes to hone in on President Trump and what's going on there. And, he did mention a couple of other possible turnovers recently. I think people just like to grab onto these
You're right.
headlines.
People love to grab on these kind of things.
It's not so crazy for this to happen in administrations.
Well, let me quote one of the tweets, because you're right, people jump on this. 3 chiefs of staff in less than 3 years, pardon me, of being president. Part of the reason why the president can't manage to pass his agenda. Donald J. Trump, January 2012, about Barack Obama. So, Pete, I wonder why then Donald Trump, as a businessman, thought having a lot of chiefs of staff was a really bad thing.
Well, every phase of a presidency requires different people. So you have John Kelly to steady the ship, and you brought in a lot of people that were finally true to the president's agenda, which he didn't have initially, who were true believers. Now you're entering a political season. You're going into 2020. You need, and I don't know Nick Ayers personally, but I know people that know him. He's a smart political mind. You're going to need that going into 2020 if you want another couple of years to legislate to make America great again, Ed.
Yeah. Okay.
The chief.
Back then it was chaos. Now, hey, this
No. Your friends in the media called it chaos. I didn't.
The chief came in, he ruled with an iron fist. You know, he served his purpose, and now President Trump is ready to move on.
It is a new
And so
phase,
it's
right?
time
You
to
just
have
got
a
to
new
worry about
phase.
his reelection.
Yeah, it's just different
He's
times.
moving on. And
but
so
you know,
are we.
We're going to move on to Carly
We're
Shimkus.
moving on to Carly
Thank
Shimkus, who's joining us this
you.
morning.
Hey,
Carly,
good
do
morning,
you remember
guys.
your headlines or do you not know them?
I memorized them.
You memorized them.
overnight.
James Comey didn't, but you're better than him.
Thank you so much.
You got it.
I'll take it. All right, good morning, guys. Let's get you caught up on a major story developing overseas. Nearly 1,000 people arrested during more violent protests in Paris. Take a look at that video. The riots continuing even after leaders suspended the fuel tax that first prompted the violence. People now demanding taxes on the rich and French President Emmanuel Macron's resignation. The protests are starting to spread in Belgium. Police used pepper spray to contain crowds as they called for their prime minister's resignation as well. In the Netherlands, dozens of peaceful protesters marched in the streets. An FBI agent is expected to survive after being shot in the shoulder in New York. Reports say the agent was doing surveillance when two gunmen drove by and opened fire in the middle of the day. The agent fired back. One suspect was arrested after driving the bullet-ridden vehicle to an auto repair shop. The other was arrested at the hospital. Authorities are investigating a motive. And a cruise line is defending itself after an American couple became stranded in Cuba. The two were left behind when the Norwegian Cruise Line ship changed its departure time. The outraged couple had to buy plane tickets home. The company, though, says passengers were warned of the schedule change more than a month in advance. And college football's most prestigious award is staying in the Sooner State. Oklahoma's quarterback Kyler Murray wins this year's Heisman, making OU the first school in history to have back-to-back Heisman-winning QBs. Murray scored 51 touchdowns this season. 51, can you believe it? I know it was a tight race, but clearly with that number, a well-deserved win.
We need to get him on the Giants is all I know. All right. Thanks so much, Carly.
Thanks.
All right. NBC's Chuck Todd hitting Trump supporters for electing him as president.
Shock to the system is just how gullible a big chunk of the country was to this. And gullible because maybe they want to be gullible.
Next guest explains what the media still doesn't quite get about Trump country.
Murmur. Thanks, Chuck Todd. We just told you about the White House shakeup. John Kelly out as chief of staff, a man who used to be part of that administration, former acting ICE director Thomas Homan. Here to react live. Rather have him than Sleepy Eyes Chuck Todd. Stay with us.
Boy, here we go.
On a roll.
A big chunk of the country was to this. And gullible because maybe they want to be gullible.
Well, the media continues to lecture Trump voters while refusing to look at why so many turned to vote for him in 2016.
Our next guest explains what the media still doesn't understand about Trump voters. Here to tell us more is publisher and editor of the Hillsborough Times-Gazette, Gary Abernathy. Gary, thank you so much for being here. So you heard Chuck Todd. They're all gullible. Now, you wrote in 2016 from Ohio that the elite press didn't understand Trump voters and their motivations. How do they still not get it in 2018?
Hey, Pete, good to be with you. I want to clarify, I'm the former editor of that paper. I'm now a freelance writer for the last several months.
Got it.
But to answer your question, it's because I think they still, 2 years ago, Pete, the media, a lot of the big media, pledged to do a better job. When President Trump shocked them by winning the election, they realized they had missed something across many parts of America, and they pledged to do a better job of covering all of America. And for a few months, I think they made an effort at that. But on the reporting side, I think they've just kind of retreated back to their bubbles, and they don't really, on a daily basis, try to reflect or get the input from rural America or heartland America nearly as much as they should.
So, Gary, hi, it's Nicole. I have a question for you. So, we're now 2 years later. They still don't necessarily seem to be understanding why Trump won. But we've resorted to calling him gullible. We know Hillary Clinton said it's a basket of deplorables. I mean, these name-calling tactics and just insults, they clearly are not understanding why President Trump won. And how do you see this playing out for 2020?
Well, and they can't understand without spending more time in the areas and with the people who supported the president. Nicole, as you know, there are a lot of labels thrown out to our part of the country, what some people call Trump country. And listen, I'm not defending the president. What I try to do is stand up for people who supported President Trump against the usual accusations of deplorables or racist or ignorant. And these are typical things. The Chuck Todd comment you played is very unfortunate. Until they make a greater effort to be here on a daily basis, whether that's opening more bureaus in places across the country or just checking in more often with folks in parts of the country like this, they'll never start to get an understanding about why people really supported Trump. You know, they like to do their analysis from hundreds of miles away or a thousand miles away about why people supported Trump. But until they really kind of live here and talk to people on a daily basis, they won't understand.
We only have.
You sometimes wonder, do they want to understand?
We only have like 15 seconds. But when Chuck Todd calls him gullible, he's calling him dumb. How do you get past that?
Well, I agree with that. Now, people who he's talking about aren't insulted by it because they have enough self-esteem not to worry about it.
Yeah.
But Pete, it sends a terrible message across the country, and sometimes you just think it's a message they want to reinforce.
You're right.
Gary, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Gary, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, Oregon's governor, he wants to spend millions of taxpayer dollars to help illegal immigrants. Former acting ICE director Thomas Homan here to react to that live, coming up next.
And remember, pictures like this one, a nearly empty school tray, students then slamming
That
Michelle
looks really
Obama's
yummy.
healthy lunch rules, how President Trump is making lunch great again.
Looks like a kiwi.
Sounds like a new hat slogan.
With some headlines, China threatening Canada over the arrest of a high-profile tech executive. Meng Wanzhou was arrested in Canada last week on behalf of the U.S. The CFO of Huawei Technologies is accused of trying to evade U.S. sanctions on Iran. China's government says Canada will face severe consequences if she is not released. And a warning from the British Prime Minister Theresa May to members of Parliament. She tells a UK media outlet her country will face, quote-unquote, uncharted waters and grave uncertainty if the Parliament rejects the Brexit deal in Tuesday's vote. Dozens in Parliament have said they will simply not support it.
The UK's been in other uncharted waters at other points in their history. Anyway.
So.
All right, well, after months of speculation, President Trump making an official announcement about the future of his White House Chief of Staff, John Kelly, that he'll be leaving at the end of the year.
Fox News contributor and former acting ICE director Tom Homan worked under John Kelly when he led the Department of Homeland Security. He joins us now to react. Good morning. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, good morning.
Okay, so let's talk about what's going on. First, we have a little bit of a shakeup, as we mentioned already, in the White House with the president mentioning that John Kelly. What do you think about that?
Well, first, John Kelly, he's an American hero, true patriot. I mean, I retired in January of 2017. I was in the office. I was leaving the office that day forever. It was the day of my retirement ceremony, and at the end of the ceremony, John Kelly's the one that called me and said that he and the president wanted me to stay and run the agency, which is a 3-step promotion. If I would have got that call from anybody else, I think I would have retired. But how do you say no to a man that sacrificed so much for his country? He spent 40-plus years in the Marine Corps, came back from retirement to step up to the secretary's job. I mean, he's given so much for his country. He's an American patriot. I respect him so much. And it's my greatest honor to serve for him, serve under him. So it's a huge loss for the administration, I think.
Tom, looking at his legacy, I agree with you. Patriot, American hero, committed to this president and the agenda. What comes next? Have you heard anything about, and what's your sense of what should come next?
Well, it's going to be tough getting somebody to fill those shoes. I mean, you're talking about John Kelly. I mean, I hope whoever fills those shoes can keep the fight up that he fought. The guy has stood by this president. He stood by Department of Homeland Security. He stood by law enforcement. He stood by the secretary under the attack she's taken, so it's going to be tough to fill those shoes. But we got a good president. I think the president has a lot of talent he can choose from, but there's never going to be another John Kelly, in my opinion.
Well, I agree with you, Tom, but what do you think about the potential of Nick Ayers coming in? What do you think that he could potentially bring to the table?
Look, I think whoever comes to the table, whether it's Nick Ayers or somebody else, they need to stand behind this president. They need to support his agenda, especially when it comes to national security, border security, defending this nation. So whoever it is needs to step up the plate and be shoulder to shoulder with this president from day one.
Okay, in talking about the agenda, it goes on, whether it's dealing with Congress on the wall funding and other big issues, or state by state. We saw in New Jersey this week the Attorney General announcing he's no longer going to cooperate with ICE after the agency decided to go after child abusers, gang members, wanted criminals in New Jersey, not far from where we're sitting right now. What do you think about this? I mean, we've heard about sanctuary cities, sanctuary states. Now you get the state attorney general say, cut it out, don't go after criminals.
Yeah, the state attorney general, the chief law enforcement officer for the state of New Jersey. It's ridiculous. If I was a taxpayer in New Jersey, I'd be insulted. I mean, you're talking about, they keep some of the sanctuary cities. They're protecting the immigrant community. And the truth is, when you can't arrest a bad guy in a county jail, the safety and security and privacy of county jail, ICE officers have to put it on the line, go knock on a door, put themselves at great risk. But the opposite side of this, which people don't understand, is when you have to go to the community to arrest this bad guy, you're going to find others that weren't even on your radar. So it actually results in sanctuary cities, in arrest of more illegal aliens, and it puts the illegal alien community at a greater risk of crime because those criminals are going to go back and victimize the very communities in which they live in. So it doesn't make sense. Sanctuary cities is a big lie by the liberals.
Sure, I mean, I have to think that this is falling in line with newly elected Governor Murphy's agenda. He wanted to be a sanctuary state, so, I mean, this isn't a surprise. But, so let's move on to Oregon. Oregon's governor budgets $4 million to sue the Trump and defend illegal immigrants with it.
Is that a real line item? $4 million to sue?
If I'm an Oregon taxpayer and you're going to enter into a civil lawsuit, you're going to sue somebody, is Oregon going to pay for your attorney? Because a deportation hearing is a civil hearing. So they're taking millions of dollars where they could buy fire trucks, they could hire school teachers, they could hire police officers, and they're going to defend somebody that's in the country illegally, committed a crime by entering this country illegally, committed yet another crime against a citizen of Oregon, and they're going to pay for their attorney. It's just, it doesn't surprise me anymore. I'm just, whether it's Oregon, California, New York, Philadelphia, it just continues. And it's anti-Trump agenda, and they're putting their own political bias ahead of public safety and national security. That's a bottom line.
It gives you an idea what the president is facing, not just with the new Congress, but state by state. There are some states out there trying to frustrate his agenda. Tom Holm, appreciate you coming in.
Wow.
Appreciate you having me.
Half of that fund would pay for the defense of immigrants who are in deportation proceedings. Okay.
All right. Meanwhile, she was acquitted in the death of her 2-year-old daughter. Now, Casey Anthony's roommate has something big to reveal. We'll have it for you coming up.
Plus, will he or won't he? Cory Booker just said when he'll decide on making a 2020 White House run.
Spartacus!
I'm sure it's going to be a moment to remember.
I can't wait. You know that. And President Trump flipping the coin at the Army-Navy football game. An incredible, a look at all the incredible ceremonies from the field. It really was a powerful pre-game prayer as well. The man who gave that prayer, coming up next.
Some wonder why we pray for a football game. In this game, every player on the field is willing to die for every person watching.
It was a very powerful moment before yesterday's game. I watched it live, and just watching these young kids, 17, 18, 19-year-old, saluting the flag, signing up to serve our country.
Coming together, singing together, unified.
It's a beautiful thing.
We
Really
watch
is.
a lot of college football this time of year, but this is more than football, obviously. That was made clear by just, the pride you saw in people standing for the anthem.
No one was kneeling, I don't think.
I didn't notice that. You're
No.
right. I didn't see anyone kneeling. Also, what we noticed was that the military chaplain, Matthew Polakowski, we're going to have him on the show later, he gave just a really awe-inspiring prayer that made all of us reflect. Watch.
Some wonder why we pray for a football game. So I tell them, in this game, every player on the field is willing to die for every person watching. And there is no greater love than to lay down one's life for what's truly good. And so, God, I do pray for these players on this field and all the good they represent. Their fellow cadets and midshipmen, soldiers, sailors, Marines, firefighters, first responders, police, and countless others who lay down their lives daily in our defense. Because in your eyes, oh God, it is not the critic who counts, but those who actually step into the arena. And so, Almighty God, we who are willing to die for others, we salute you. Let this game begin. Amen.
Let me tell you, I think my favorite part of that was it's not the critic that counts, but the person that steps into the arena, which obviously is not necessarily just talking about a football arena, but it's such a bigger thing. Right now when you have media and people attacking, we were just talking earlier about being attacked, it's not the person who's attacking that counts, but the people, and that's what we want to focus on. And I think he stated it beautifully.
Well said. In fact, the prayer came before the national anthem. It's the prayer before the pledge, before the anthem. And it's a reminder, you see all the critics, to your point about critics, of college, high school prayer huddles on football fields where they're saying, you can't do that. It was such a beautiful recognition that in this country you should be free to pray and acknowledge the importance of prayer and faith in the history of our nation. Chaplains and the military have been such an essential part of it. It was beautiful, and it was on national television, and it was right there. And it was wonderful.
The president was there, participated in the coin toss. I think I heard that Army won. I'm not sure.
I think it's the only thing he's gotten wrong in 2 years.
Oh, yeah.
Is he flipped it and Navy won the coin toss. So
that's the only thing he's done wrong.
I think
in 2 years.
so. I mean, we'll check the record. We'll have the brain room check that out. But
the 10th sitting president to be at that game. It was a great moment, great day. Absolutely. Pete's happy, so therefore we all have to be happy.
We're all happy now.
All right, but now let's.
What is this, a dictatorship?
Let's get to some headlines.
You said it.
This is good
Hey,
stuff.
Carly.
Hey, good
Carly,
morning,
good
guys.
morning.
If that doesn't make you proud to be an American, man, I don't know
Absolutely.
what would. All right, let's get straight into it. Remember Casey Anthony? Her former roommate is now speaking out in a brand new documentary. Listen.
She was laughing and joking and having a good time while her daughter was missing.
Well, Clint House recounting Casey partying after her daughter Kaylee disappeared. The 2-year-old's body was found 5 months after she was reported missing. Casey was found not guilty in her murder. House says Casey seemed like a loving mother, but now claims she is lying about everything. The documentary airs tonight on the Reels Network. And Democrat Cory Booker says he will take time over the holidays to think about a 2020 run for president. He made the announcement during a high-profile visit to New Hampshire over the weekend. The New Jersey senator said he expects to make a formal announcement in about a month. And making school lunch great again? Chocolate milk and biscuits are back on the menu. The Trump administration rolling back Obama-era school lunch rules. Under Obama, schools could serve only whole grains. The Trump administration loosening some of those guidelines, saying food is being wasted because kids don't eat it.
More pizza.
And take a listen to this. A touching reunion. A family forced to evacuate the California wildfires returns home weeks later to find their dog, Madison, waiting for them.
Here's the best. Imagine the loyalty of hanging in through the worst of circumstances and being here waiting. It was so emotional.
Just tugs at the heartstrings. The family couldn't get to Madison before the campfire spread. The incredible reunion happening earlier this week. Don't you love that?
That
Your
is
headlines,
amazing.
guys.
Yeah,
Great
really
story.
wonderful. Dog is
Great.
still waiting.
Yeah.
All right, now we're going to turn to your extreme weather. More than 1,400 flights canceled as a major storm slams the southeast.
Parts of North Carolina expecting more than a foot of snow. That's right, a foot of snow as temperatures are set to plunge below freezing.
All right, meteorologist Rick is live with how long the system is expected to last.
I
Rick,
keep on
stop
waiting.
laughing.
I keep waiting for you to say my last name.
Say it.
So I know it's in the script right there, and then meteorologist Rick.
Breakmuth.
Yes.
Nice.
I know, I just don't want to fumble it.
No, that was good. You can do it. You can do it. Yeah, so we do have a big storm going across, especially North Carolina, but also into Virginia, back across the southern Appalachians, in towards the Smoky Mountains. Everywhere here, we've got winter storm warnings going on. We're going to be watching very heavy snow throughout the day today, but we have a real big problem between what is rain and what is snow. It's always really difficult to forecast that. We know it's all rain to the south. We have flooding concerns here across much of Georgia. Also really windy with that rain. We'll see probably a number of trees go down, and we're going to be watching for power outages. But here's the snow. Look at that. Charlotte, you're right on that edge. Looking at a little bit of freezing rain accumulating, some icing, and then some big heavy snow. The snow, by the way, is moving a little bit farther towards the north, kind of just to the south of D.C. is where we'll see the accumulating snow. All right, guys.
All right,
Snow in the Carolinas.
Meteorologist Rick. There you go.
Well done. All right, well, coming up, those wanting to be a police officer taking a hit, job applications plummeting at departments nationwide. An assistant police chief is here to tell us what's behind that troubling trend.
All right, plus Andrew McCarthy, Mike Huckabee, Corey Lewandowski, and former Reagan economic advisor Art Lafer, all here live.
As students at Taylor University storm the basketball court in an unusual college hoops tradition. Look at all those people. For 22 years, the students in Indiana dress up in costumes for the Silent Night game. They remain quiet until Taylor scores its 10th point. Then the crowd goes wild. This was the first time ever the team lost on this special night. Now watch this. Drivers forced to dodge a massive industrial spool barreling down the highway.
Call 911, somebody. Holy cow, what is that thing?
Gosh, a semi-truck lost it along a Houston freeway. A spool like that can weigh up to 18,000 pounds. This is the third time since October industrial spools have fallen off vehicles in the Houston area. Wow.
All right, well,
You were talking about schools going
all
down
right,
the
well,
street.
who wants to be a police officer in today's political environment?
Job applications, unfortunately, plummeting right now in 66% of police departments all across America. But why? And are American cities prepared to deal with this troubling trend? Here with insight is Assistant Chief Russell Hamill with the Montgomery County Police Department in Maryland. Assistant Chief, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Nicole. Good morning, Ed. How are you all today?
Good morning. We're doing wonderful, but it's tough to hear that there are not enough people that want to go in and wear the blue, frankly. Before we get to the stats, before we get to what we can do about it, what do you think the problem is?
I think it's a multifaceted problem that we see. First off, when the jobless rate is low, we're competing with private industry who has an advantage over us with salary and benefits in recruiting the high caliber candidates that we want and that they want, but we want people to serve the community. Also, we see over the past couple of years, due to a number of highly publicized events, that public confidence was eroded in the police departments across the country. And I think when people see that, they become more reluctant to want to come into that area of service. And it can be difficult to overcome that, but it's our responsibility to try to overcome that.
All right, so the new officers that are sworn in are down from 724,000 in 2013 to 701,000 in 2016. I mean, that is a big decrease. You know, I have a question for you. Do you think that, you mentioned yourself, you can't compete with the private sector, and that's because when you join the police force, it's not necessarily the highest salary, but maybe it's the generation of requiring instant gratification from this millennial generation. Whereas if you join a police force or a lot of government jobs, it's long-term benefits that really count. Are they just not recognizing this?
I think that is part of the phenomena, they don't look at it as a career, more they look at it as a job. Myself, I've been here 35 years. It's been a career. It's been a great career. And that's what we want to emphasize with the youth, that take the longer view, not the more immediate view. But that's difficult with this generation. But I tell you, we have some great applicants in our police department. Our applications have diminished as well, but I see some great kids, in my viewpoint. Kids
and you said it.
But
If you can stop some of these attacks on police, that will probably have an impact. We thank you for your service. 35 years. That is terrific. We appreciate that. By the way, I live in Montgomery County. I might want to talk to you later about some of the red light cameras. Maybe we'll have a conversation offline.
I'll make